everybody. You guys know what it is. I'm still waking up.
It's
But
Christmas.
no, yeah, I guess it isn't.
It's
Right now, it's still like a week away from Christmas at the time of this recording. But welcome to Glovey Table Talks, where we have what does Peter say? Where we talk about gloving stuff, and we're all other glovers. I am Snaps. I had to think about it for a second. And joined with me today are, let's see in order, SteamBoy, Dubuque, aka the Gloving Paradigm, Starstream TuT, and Kevin, aka Puppet, with us again.
We back, baby.
For part 2 of the Puppet Takeover. Man, it's good to see you guys again.
If this is
see you all.
a puppet takeover, are we all Peters or are we all Kevins?
Oh my god.
Peter puppets.
We're Peter puppets.
Peter Puppets.
Peter Peps.
Peter Pups. No, I like that.
No, and
Oh,
I
man.
believe we decided on this particular episode that we were going to cover something that we technically did cover, but didn't cover at the same time. So we've talked about gloving history before, but we've always talked about gloving history as produced by Amazing Lights, which is Southern California history. Okay, so one of the things that I've always kind of wanted to hear is just see what different regions have in terms of their personal local history, and what better way to do that than having Kevin come back on the show and talk about Hawaii's gloving history, because there seems to be I don't want to say they're hot takes, but I think there's some spicy takes in here that are going to be kind of contentious within the community, and I kind of want to see how that goes. So
I wonder what you mean.
well, I honestly
very
see here.
ominous.
So here's the thing: there, if we talk about what has been established by Amazing Lights in terms of gloving history, right? Like kind of like what the trends were at the time and how that kind of developed, and just seeing how it's going to be different when it comes to a specific location, such as like Hawaii. And I actually, the reason why I always put Hawaii in this like very special bubble is because you guys are on an island. You are literally isolated from everybody else. And so there's more of this, I don't want to say like insular bubble thing happening, but that is basically what happens. Is that there's this insular bubble. And so that's where I pretty much like what I said is how Hawaii popularized the style of platforming. Definitely gives you kind of like what built up to that point. So
Right. So basically, and this is why I talked about this literally on my podcast that I just did yesterday. But I don't even know. You know, that's the craziest thing, is that when I started my gloving journey, we were already the third generation of glovers to have started. There was like 2 others. And when we started, that second generation was kind of already phasing out. And actually, I somehow managed to get into contact with some of the people from the very first generation of gloving. I had kind of like a little interview only through like Facebook Messenger. But I would really love to get an interview with those guys back in the day, and to just even see if they even know what happened with our scene, because a lot of people they call me the OG, right, of Hawaii, but that's not even true. I'm
You say you were like third or second generation?
third or second, yes. So the first generation kind of started around like nearly when I guess, when was it, 2006 or whatever, when Hermes started or whatever?
yeah,
Do you guys
so
recall the year?
2006.
Yeah, we were closely started around there apparently.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and the first generation of glovers. This is how the conversation went, because I kind of asked, I forgot his name. I have it somewhere down in my history of my chat logs. But it was they started the same way. They started to just wiggle their fingers and lights, and it was all about expression, right? And then came these new guys who really took it to the next level. And you guys may not know this team. I would assume that they were heavily inspired by people like AO. They were a team called WoW, WAO question mark, which is another one. And then so these guys at the time were like, to me, like the guys. These are like the golden standard of gloving. And back in the day, right when I started, there was also this other team called Aloha Nation, which is not the same Aloha Nation that everyone knows as hashtag Aloha Nation. Aloha Nation was this super group, a team of like elites from all these different teams on the island. And back then, there was this east and west side like rivalry, and also central, right? So like, as you can see, and there are beasts all over, right?
I'm
and
getting like the rap scene, hip hop scene flashback from the 90s with Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac and all that stuff. Like that whole, that whole energy. That's what I'm feeling right now.
It was that energy, and it was such a exciting time because at the same time you didn't get that gatekeeping toxicity that you would imagine how you would see through like other I know like all the teams in California, you know, they're actually really close, right? It was kind of like the same with Hawaii. You have this loving community within no more than 2 hours like vicinity from each other, but so much different styles, right? Shout outs to team, I don't know if you guys know like Up High or like 4D, right? Art
4D.
I was gonna say 4D is one I recognize.
Right, exactly. And yeah, man, it was such an amazing time. But I mean, but before then, right, those like people like the teams like WoW or Aloha Nation were teams that I looked up to, and when we started, right, they all, I guess within like a year or two, kind of eventually phased out. And it wasn't just IM that was coming up, it was teams like ART, VC, 4D, that kind of just took over the reins of the community. And it was such an amazing time. And that's kind of where the seeds of like inspiration and confidence came from, was from one of the OGs back in the day. And his name was Pono. We talked about him in the podcast we did yesterday, but he was like the Nick Bash of our community back in the day, and he was just like amazing. Like I remember we were at like this kickback with all these teams at this house. If you guys seen Christian Park Sessions in California recently, he gave the show, and there was just a crowd around him, and after he was done, everyone was applauding. Like, and I, like, me as a younger Glover, I was like, whoa, like, that guy is the guy, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was such a crazy time.
Man, okay. Oh, that's just some old
It's
there.
Yeah,
it's so crazy that you guys had / have a community that was developed like that within, you know, when you compare just Hawaii to just California, it's insane, right? Like, I don't know what the exact population is for Hawaii.
me neither.
But it's very dwarfed compared to California, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if we look at the, like, just by Glovers at that point, just because, you know, if you take 1% of the whole population, take like at least knows what gloving is, and then takes upon like learning it here and there, like that number is drastically different.
Kind of want you guys to imagine this, okay? Because I want to shout out. I might have shouted him on last podcast, but his name is Tim Lum. Okay, so he basically was Hawaii's Brian Lim. He had a business selling lights. He was the creator of Rave Rock, and so he had this house. This house was just a big living room full of mirrors, and all the teams would just go there and sesh, right? And on top of that, really think about, like, so because California, you have like all this travel time to have to go to whatever stores were available back then, right? But in Hawaii, you had all that compacted in one space, and so it had this very rich history, right? That not a lot of people talked about, and that's the other thing was that California, right, or Amazing Lights had a camera guy. They had Andy, right? Who, by the way, I love the guy. They had someone to document all these things, whereas other communities never really had that camera guy. They had nothing. There's not you don't hear like the history of like Arizona. You don't hear the history of like the DMV area, like probably because there's no camera guy. There's not a dude there who wants, yeah, who does film, right? And that's kind of what helped our scene as well, because I kind of was like a little bit later on that camera guy, right? I was like, yo, this needs, like, because it had this rich history, it's like, this needs to be out there, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I will say that I think the DMV does, like, we do have the capacity to do it, but, well, at least right now, like, Josh doesn't actually have the capacity to do it because he's busy. But it would be interesting to, because, like, when Peter brought up the premise of this episode, it gave me the idea of maybe reaching out to maybe Outlaw or our friend No One, and seeing their perspective a little bit more on a, like, or rather, I already know the perspective, but I would rather them tell it for the DMV's side of it all, because apparently it was a lot more than I thought it was, because the DMV's upbringing was more of like the entirety of the DMV and up north, up the coast. Like, they would go up to New York to go to bosses and stuff.
Yeah,
Because there were
sorry.
bosses in Hawaii, right? Or no?
There were competitions, but no sanctioned bosses until like the whole, like, after GGN thing. With the
Okay.
whole recent IGL thing, there was no
Mhm.
bosses.
Oh, okay.
But they were all community ran by Rave Rock, and then like I've hosted a lot, both online, locally. But there are always someone out there that was like, yo, we're gonna host a comp. Okay, we're gonna host a comp. And then so you have these little eras, right?
Yeah, Dustin, to kind of add into what you just said, I think that for the DMV, at least, I think a big thing with our scene is that with the way that we kind of came together, in a lot of ways, like, kind of the more, like, I guess, like, what you would call, like, the quote-unquote, like, official elements of, like, what could be going into a scene kind of didn't really exist in a lot of ways, because at the end, like, we are a much smaller, like, scene, and it basically came to a point where it was just more like a friend who would host a lot of house parties when we would have the chance, and we would be just gloving all night. Like, that kind of our ideas of, like, thinking in that official capacity, I think, didn't always, like, it wasn't always really on our minds. Like, we would host competitions, we would do all that stuff, but it's like we were still, like, young, and a lot of those things that we thought about, like, for example, like, media coverage didn't really come about until, like, much later. I think by, like, 2019, it's like you said, that person kind of did become me, but at that point, like, it kind of becomes difficult because as much as I like making stuff, I'm not the best distributor. Like, I don't know, like, once I have all the stuff and it's made, like, my big thing is, like, what the heck am I even supposed to do with this? And then the other big thing is that, like, especially around 2019, it kind of came to a point where finding people to organize stuff was kind of getting more and more difficult. So it's like there were fewer and fewer people doing that. So, like, the logistics of, if, okay, someone gonna run it, but also you're gonna run cameras, you're also gonna, like, run X, Y, and Z. It just becomes a lot. And I think specifically for our scene, like, if it's gonna get bigger, it's gonna involve more and more people, like, kind of, like, willing to step up to take over certain types of roles, right? I know that's one of my goals for when I'm basically out of this hiatus, is that, like, basically finding people who, like, because I know there are certain people who are interested in helping run the scene, but sometimes it's like you don't exactly know what part of that you want to be a part of until someone tells you, like, at least the baseline of how that role kind of works, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I
totally
think it kind of
realize.
comes to a point of uncharted territory for a lot of people. You know, I mean, it's Amazing Lights aside with their very, very aggressive marketing. It's kind of like how Josh says, like, a lot of us probably are just not, we're good at one thing, but we can't be good at like all these different jobs. So actually running into somebody who's just so happens to be a good distributor, who just also knows somebody who's a really good marketer, and somebody who's also a really good promoter, and somebody who can also manage a social media site, just kind of these chains of networks that tends to happen, which I feel like Amazing Lights just was really good at. Considering
I mean,
Brian.
Right. I mean, also, I'm not saying that that's like a good excuse in a lot of ways, because like in my mind, I am constantly thinking like, man, like, why don't I just like post? It's kind of like I'll always ask Dustin like, yo, when should I post this? And Dustin's just like, bro, just post it. Just do what you want. And, like, I really should just do that. And it's kind of like going back to what Kevin said, I think in our last podcast, like if you want to do something, just kind of do it. Because like a lot of people recently have been asking me like how I do the video projects, and I'm like, bro, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing it and learning as I go. And I think in a lot of ways, like that's kind of the best advice, right? Like if you're in uncharted territory, like you don't know what you're doing, just do it, learn from your mistakes, and then keep doing it if you find that you really like it.
Right, I kind of wanted to like add to that as well, like as far as like, cause back in the day, I had a goal, right, and my goal was to put like Hawaii on the map. So it's like, all you have to do is make noise. You make a lot of noise. You keep making noise. You annoy people by the amount of noise you make, and there were a lot of people, and I was fortunate enough to be just surrounded by so many Glovers who took leadership roles in the community, because I was low key back in the day. Like I wanted to be low key. I didn't want to like become like to me the popularity of like gloving was, to me, seemed so cringe. But then like back then you see people like Navi, if you guys know who Navi is. You see, I don't know if you guys know who even Cyclone is. Back in the day, there's this competition called Gloving Masters Online, which was like the very first like
GMO.
GMO, one of the very first online GL competitions. You know who won that? Fucking a guy from Hawaii, Cyclone, right? And this is such a bizarre thing to me that something like this, like just thinking that Hawaii like was capable of doing something like this way back in the day. To me, that was like so crazy, and that's kind of what propelled me to want to like further this, because everybody was like, okay, I'll post here and there, and then they'd be like explode, right? But then I was like, yo, like we have so much more, there's so much more crazier artists on this like island that I wanted to showcase, and that's eventually what I tried to do, right?
Man,
It comes down to goals.
Yeah, it does. I'm still just baffled at, like, Kevin, if you had to do a ballpark number of everyone in Hawaii that was active in your scene, how many people would you say that is?
Dude, literally
Triple digit?
it would probably be like quad.
Wow.
What?
I'm not even joking.
I would actually find it more believable if
I'm
it was
not
over
even
1,000.
I'm not even joking. Like the weirdest thing, like I still to this day just don't understand, because the way that our sessions work, right, would be there'd be at least a new guy every sesh, but our numbers would stay at least at its peak around like maybe 40 to like 25 people. It's gone down drastically since then, but like it would be in that ballpark range of like every sesh, right? But the thing was, there'd be new people every single time. New
it would
people.
never surpass that number.
It would never surpass it. So there's this constant, and that's just
flow.
talk about sessions. Right, exactly. And this isn't even accounting for like Glovers you see at like raves or events here, right? There's always a new guy. Even today, at the last two sessions, there's a new guy. I'm like, what the heck? Where are these guys? Why are these guys not coming out every single time? And then so my understanding is that, you know, they dip their toes into it, and then like they stop, and then like they have other friends that come here, and then like, okay, they're out, they're in and out and in and out, right? So I would guess over 1,000 easily.
Wait, so the first thing is there's like a gloving, like a Facebook group for Hawaii glovers. I know it's not a
Yes,
like good representation of
it is
that
not.
number, but how many people are part of that?
There's like 850 or something like that. Around,
Part
not
of-
even past 900. But like I know for a fact that not everybody who's came out
Yeah.
is even in there. Simply because like the group is private, it's really hard to join. And we could like go into that. That was like a whole nother thing as well. But yeah, that is not a good representative of how much numbers there are.
Okay.
That are saying.
And then the other thing I would say is I feel like the sheer volume of people that you have could be due to, I feel like, just the culture of Hawaii as well. Like I feel like, at least from my perspective, I've always had this idea that there is like this level of like camaraderie and brotherhood within people that live in Hawaii, you know,
100%. Right.
and you know, you don't see that nearly as much in terms of the culture of California, the culture of Texas.
Right.
Like you don't see that nearly as much because, you know, there's so much more space. Like you guys are isolated, right? Like you guys are
Right.
isolated. Like everyone that you have on your islands are your own people.
Yeah.
You know, like it is, like I said, like this idea of camaraderie that I think may or may not exist.
Right. And like think about this, okay? Like imagine you have this rivalry within the island, okay? But once a Glover goes out and competes at like IGC, all those rivalries go away. Everyone in Hawaii is cheering for that one guy that's representing Hawaii.
Well,
at
yeah, it's
bigger-
Hawaii.
exactly. So it's like there's this friendly competition, but like we push each other simply because we have competitive nature and just showing the aloha spirit, right? And that's kind of what I wish like more people would understand, because I understand like why are some Glovers so mean to each other, or like they gatekeep other Glovers, or like I don't understand it. It's such like a foolish thing to do something like, especially
It's
with
selfish.
with lights on your fingers, bro, right? It is selfish, but I understand that not everyone is a nice person, right? And their foundation and you know they keep their secrets, or you know they talk shit or whatever, right? I get it, right? It's a dog eat dog world out there. But coming from Hawaii, right? It's like it's truly like there is something in the water, and you understand, like once you come here, you will feel, people have told me like they feel the difference within our community, right? And that's just because like of Hawaii's culture.
So have you ever heard of the bystander effect?
No, what? Oh wait, yes. Where you just kind of like you follow what the other bystanders are doing when something bad is happening.
Essentially, yeah. So it's like, it's a common theory, social theory, for let's say an emergency's happening. Let's say we're all in a hotel and we see someone's getting shot outside. Everyone in that room is each assuming someone's calling 911. But in reality, they're all just not, right? They think
I see what
someone
you're
else is
saying.
doing it.
Because they're deflecting.
Like we're all talking
responsibility.
about like roles in the community. That's kind of like why I made WWG. I felt like no one was gonna do that. You know, someone does it, and then that feels that the puzzle gets a little more clear. I feel like everyone can offer to be a piece, but they just don't know what, and they don't even realize that is the thing. And that right there can put it all more in perspective and get rid of that effect, because everyone assumes like someone's filling in that leadership thing, you know, so they don't got to worry about it.
I think that's the same kind of scenario when it came to me and learning that there wasn't actually content about gloving. There is gloving content, but then there was no gloving, or there was no content about gloving, you know.
Right.
And that's where, like, for the longest time, I was sitting there like, why is no one making content about gloving? Because, like, it's this popular thing. We have competitions, but there was just no one was doing a podcast thing. And I mean, this idea sat with me for like a really long time. Like, when I first had this idea about doing a gloving podcast was like 2016. And funny enough, I was actually doing an unrelated podcast. I did it for like a year as like a challenge to myself, and then I stopped. But ever since I stopped, I always sat there like every day, was always thinking about making this gloving podcast. And it wasn't until like mid 2018, I want to say, is when my friend, ironically, his name is Kevin, but not Puppet. I just thought that was kind of funny. He actually pushed me to like go with it, because it's like no one else is doing it, so you're the one who's thinking about it. Why aren't you doing it?
Just do it.
Exactly.
Just do it.
Yeah,
Like,
I've
yeah,
pretty much
and-
got the Shia LaBeouf treatment.
Right. I mean, see, like you doing this, Peter, is inspired me to do the podcast, my own, right?
Hey,
And it's
yo.
like hopefully more comes from it, man. It's like, and look at like people like Teddy, who does like YGM, because he's doing a class where lessons in classes, right? That inspired me to do lessons in classes as well. And it just took one dude to do it, right? And I'm sure there are so many other ideas out there that glovers have, because glovers are very creative, right? There's so many ideas out there that probably just don't come to fruition because simply they just feel like someone else is gonna do it, or they feel like they don't have the credibility to do it. But guess what, right? I was just a random kid on Hawaii, like not even part of the same landmass, and I was able to do something like this, right? It's like anybody can do it. You just gotta do it.
And then they put you on the box.
I mean, no, in all honesty, you have to sit here and ask yourself, as like a glover, hasn't it always been a dream to like any glover to be like, yeah, I want to be the dude on the Wheaties box? You know what I mean? Like, you want your face on the Wheaties box at least once. Like, it's an achievement that you just want to have. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know it's not Kevin, but you know.
I mean,
It's-
look,
it's not-
Mez for crying out loud
Yeah,
got on the
he
box.
is.
He's a Wheatie box kid now. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, like, what is it? Like, I think we could argue that the controls are the most iconic. It is the most iconic glove set. I feel like.
I kind of agree. I hear a lot of less negative things from the controls compared to all the other amazing.
That's what
lights.
everyone wants. That's why I
So-
have two of them.
I think there's a communal consensus to a lot of people who have been around with Amazing Lights for as long as they've been around, like myself included. I kind of feel like the pinnacle of their quality of product was the controls.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I just got my first set of controls this year as a birthday gift from dear old Dustin over there. And yeah, I can say it is like my daily driver for sure. Like, I love like all the different gloves out there, but just in terms of most reliable and like also having the most versatility, like if it's the one thing I'm gonna bring like on a like random trip out of nowhere, like that's the one that I'm bringing, because I know like that was the one that's actually gonna like get me through most situations just perfectly fine.
Right, and it's in the middle between like complex and simple. Like it's simple enough you could just throw whatever color on there and set, but it's not too complex where it's like, okay, you have to reprogram using an app and go through all these barriers, right? And
Right.
yeah, that's why I love them too.
Actually, speaking of that, do you mind if I ask you a question about kind of that part of Hawaii? Like, you mentioned that you guys have had like actually like your own like
Brian Lynn.
gloving up, yeah, like your own gloving
Yeah.
apparel stuff going on. Because I know, for example, there's like what's that one website, like Hawaii Lights or something like that?
Oh, Raver Lights Hawaii. That's
Yeah.
That's my boy Matt, obvious.
Yep.
He sells light, but not apparel. I know he like loves to sell like different types of lights, like bulbs and all
He's
these
like
older
the,
sets.
He's like the cataracts of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right, he is exactly.
Hawaii's
That's the best way
cataracts?
to put it.
Yeah, but yeah, just do you mind just going into more detail about that? Because I mean, like, It was news to me until you and I started talking personally, like very
Right.
recently. So all of that was like I had no context for any of that, honestly.
Well, I mean, Matt. I mean, yeah, he just is just one dude, and he just loves to sell lights, and he's been like in the scene longer than me. And that's pretty much, it, right? But Brian, right? He had the whole infrastructure. Not only did he host, like, he had a business back in the day with Rave Rock, but he had like connections to host, like, even gloving competitions at clubs, at events. He
Nice.
holds events now at a big club called Hawaiian Brian's in Hawaii. So he's still doing that, and he loves gloving. He sponsored our team, IM, way back before like I was even part of like Amazing. So it's like to have someone like that as well at Hawaii's foundation was very, I think, partly why it became what it was. There already was this officialness to the scene back in the day, simply because he existed.
Wait, so is his store still still operating?
Oh no,
Rave Rock?
no.
Okay.
No, he
So he
stopped that a
doesn't-
while ago. Right.
Okay, he stopped doing that, but he still hosts events.
Yes, audiophile. He hosts, like, you know, big DJs at the club, and we all go there. And there was this thing. Well, I don't remember. Was that like there's this thing called Club Glove or something? I think with like was that Amazing? Do you guys remember Club Glove?
The name
I
rings
do
a bell.
remember. Yep. I do remember that vaguely, where they were hosting like gloving events at like
Yes.
big places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So Club Glove partnered with, like, I guess whatever Tim was doing with audiophile, and literally glovers got into events for free.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Yeah.
it was huge. Like, glovers, right? So like, it's
yeah,
like,
that was a thing.
yeah, that was a thing.
The young blood Glover over here is like losing its mind over this knowledge.
You're telling me that not only did these guys not have to crotch their gloves,
Yes.
but they also, if they put them on, they're like, yeah, I'm a glover, bro, and they're like, okay, you're in,
yes.
dude. That's-
Yes. Right? Could you, like, that's unheard of, right? It's like that's why it's a kind of a blessing, and we're very just lucky, like, to have figures like that. And Tim wasn't just the only figure like that. You know, we had other leaders who just nothing but love and sacrifice for the community. Okay, like one of the people, like, I'm referring to, like, shout outs to Schematics, Royce Okazaki, who was the GGN leader for Hawaii. There's just so many other figures out there. A lot of people think Hawaii, right, and leadership, right, they think of me simply because I'm the poster boy of Hawaii. But bro, there are so many more people on the back end who just aren't as big, but they have put so much more effort into whatever events are happening, right? And, you know, people like Nathan, Mr. Freckles, right? Seaway, right? It's more than just me who really they just love the art as much as me, and so we're all in this together, and there's this whole team doing things, right? Not just one dude.
Oh, we gotta censor when you say because he's Seaway. We gotta censor that. No one can know.
Can't know that
Name redacted.
Navy Captain Seaway is actually a regular boy. Well, I think, right? Like, have you ever seen Seaway's like profile picture? Like,
Yeah,
if you actually look at it, what is that picture? For a long time, I was just like, oh, that's just Seaway, and then I looked at it when I was like, no, that's some random dude, bro.
No, dude, that's showmanship.
Whoa. Wait.
Yeah.
Do you know what the funny thing is?
It's
Okay,
so
so
bad.
I just got that.
No.
Yeah.
Is that actually why he did that?
That's very much a him thing to do.
Yeah, so
I know one of the other secrets that we can also censor that he does. Have you guys seen like certain videos on
okay. Kevin, can you go more into, I guess, like a little bit of a breakdown, I guess, into like the various like sub communities? Because you mentioned there is like a friendly rivalry, there was a friendly rivalry between East, West, and Central. But like from you say many, so yeah, I would love to hear just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so All you really need to know was that when I was coming up, there were people on the west and people on the east, and there were a couple Glovers in the central, but they weren't really like the main like upcoming teams back in the day. But teams like IM and Up High, or VC, or teams like on the east side 4D, ART, there were rivalries between, if you guys know, I Am Dynamics and I Am Corrupted. Well, it was Art Corrupted before I Am, or people like I Am Tech versus ART Hypno, right? I never really had any rivalries of myself, but you would see these matches go on over different eras, and they were just like such huge battles. And there was always a lot of talk, you know what I mean? There's a lot of talk in the chat boxes, not necessarily up front, but like you can tell, like, oh bro, like, you know what I mean? Like there's a presence sometimes when people glove and they're like there to like flex on you. They're like there to flex on you, right? And there was a lot of that in our scene. There was this thing called, and I don't know if you guys know who I Am RB is. Okay, so I Am RB was the first captain of I Am. There were 3 captains. It was me, Dynamics, and RB. There was this thing called the RB factor, where he would give people light shows, okay, and he would just tell them, okay, I go first. Like he would just go first. You know, everyone is just for whatever reason was reluctant to go first. He was like, no, I'll go first, and he would just have the craziest tech, the craziest flail tuts, the craziest like everything, and it would make Glovers, like the second guy, not want to go. They're like, oh shit, like can I not? I have seen it in front of my face where he trades with people and like the other guy just doesn't want to go, and like we call that the RB factor, because he was like, yo, that is like gangster that you just want to go first and you make not people like not want to go out for some reason. But yeah, so like every time we would go to sessions and events and we'd trade with like people on the other side, it was still friendly, but it's like you know internally, and we've talked about this, internally, it was like, yo, we just want to be better than you guys, right? And I think kind of going back to like IM, it's just kind of like really interesting how our team just used to be rivals. And now they're part of IM, a lot of them, especially the ones who would enter competitions.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because at least for our area in the DMV, like I think that competitive element is kind of just has never been that strong, right? I think again because like the core community of people who are always there were just already all friends, right? Because it's like the community is already that small, and anyone who would kind of be in there on like a secondary level, like kind of just popping in and out, like as they come and go. When they come, like it would be like, I think that because there were not around enough people constantly to lab with, that just unfortunately like they would be on a skill cap that's a little lower. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear about, because on the one hand I think that kind of like more competitive nature that seems to come from the Hawaii scene and like other scenes that I've heard about does kind of drive that excitability in like the local community. It does drive stuff like that. It's, I don't know, it's something that I've been trying to figure out what to do for our community, because like again it's overall like not as competitive. It's kind of why like I'm trying to drive more people to come out through like video production stuff, because there like you can all come together and we're all doing something and making something together. But
you gotta have competitive people in your scene. You gotta want to have people that want to be the best. Like I'm gonna say it, when I started to glove, I wanted to be the best like in the world. And you and other people from other teams wanted to be the best in the world, right? And I understand that like other people, it is an art, right? That other people they don't feel like that is like an achievement that they want to, you know, they want to be the best versions of themselves, which I 100% agree, right? But like back in the day, there were, when you watch Amazing Light's boss battles, Back in the day when you watch IGC, right? Back in the day where there's all these crazy people in beasts and you just want to be exactly like them, and you see, oh, that guy won, right? There was this different, it was different back then where it's like, oh man, like I want to be the best, right? I feel like there isn't that much now where it's like, okay, there's like this higher end goal. I mean, we have G3, right? But it just isn't the same, right? And to just be, I came from a competitive background with gaming, and that really transitioned over with gloving. And so were a lot of the glovers on the other team are gamers too, and they're very highly competitive, right? And then so that's partly why we got like a lot of competitive nerds, bro. Why?
That's interesting as well, but because like to me, one of the things I always tell people when it comes to competitions is that what competitions do that I feel like people always miss the point on is that it puts what we have been working on front and center for an audience to look at. You know, regardless of who wins or loses, we're literally putting our art there front and center so somebody can look at it. You know, even by, you know, being a bystander and just walking by and seeing it, right? And I think that's what people just don't understand when it comes to why so many things actually have a competitive element. It's just because it is a format where we are able to put something front and center for an audience to look at and let it go from there. There's a reason why, like a good example why Magic the Gathering was so successful for a very, very long time is because they had organized play. There was a competitive circuit that people can follow, and stars can rise and fall however it goes, you know, yada yada yada. So it's one of those things to me, like when it came to watching like boss videos from Amazing Lights, like there were certain competitors that I watched and that made it really, really far. Like SS Buddha is a very good example of one that he has a couple of bosses that he's gone through and got really high up in the rankings, and watching his like journey through the rounds was always interesting. Aku is another one that there's a couple of boss videos that he's done that you can follow his journey through the rounds. So there is this way of being able to kind of curate this journey process for these competitors. How we do that is up to us, and we'll figure it out eventually. But it's one of those things that I feel like when it comes to understanding what the competitive scene actually does, it allows us to just follow people and literally see progression and see, you know, how somebody approaches not only just their own style, but what has been presented in front of them and just having a response to that.
If I'm not mistaken, I've talked to Teddy about like the very first gloving competition, and I think it was inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not even joking. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I talked to him about this, and it was like, and if you remember kind of like the roots of like the scorecard and how comps were before, there were like point systems. I think it was like a voting. I'm not sure, but I know it happened. Like the very first competition happened at some event, and then came like literally one of the biggest IGCs ever. So it was like literally 0 to 100. But I kind of have to like talk to him more about exactly what happened, because he could probably tell that story way better than I can.
I feel like it'd be cool if we just managed to get Teddy on this podcast.
That'd be dope. That'd be super sick. Because if you, I think he might be right now the longest going glover, like consistently. If you really think about it,
Right.
To keep going consistently, still active. He might be the one right now who's the oldest actively, right? So there's definitely, I know he definitely has a lot of interesting perspectives and some very well-known perspectives on how the whole, at least California scene ran, and the whole infrastructure of how gloving competitions were, especially things like IGC, because he would like MC them, right? And I mean, he's an IGC champion as well, multiple, right? Yeah. So yeah, no, I feel like having him on maybe one day would be very beneficial for the gloving scene as a whole, just to see his perspective, right?
I know it'd be good for me, you know.
That'd be crazy.
I'm going on 4 years. That's it. 4 years. I don't know. I don't even keep count anymore. But that's like the era that I have witnessed is like nothing, right? Like it's nothing.
You saw Mumbles on his
Mumbles?
third. Was it his third? It is his third.
I believe it's his third.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mumbles has won
But-
IGC. I do remember that. He's won a few number of bosses for sure.
Well, I meant like in terms of recency, like you see Mumbles, like I think he's on, like yeah, like doesn't that make him like the number one like title, like the most big titles?
He holds the biggest title right now, being the winner of G3, since that
But does
is
it give him the most titles?
The biggest, like the most big
notoriety.
titles. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you could say that, yeah. But I
Yeah.
only witnessed one of them, so I'm just like, whatever, dude. Like
Right, and it's a different. Yeah, no, it's definitely a different time.
No, but
Yeah, no,
if-
okay, I'm going on 3. So I started in 2020, so I'm going on 3 years.
Yeah, nothing was happening. Nothing was happening.
Yeah, nothing's happening, right? Like, like
What are
Oh,
here's a
man.
question. Here's a question. What are some scenes that you wish you could see or hear the history about? Because I hear a lot of things about Texas.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't know anything about Texas, to be honest. I mean, besides that they have a lot of beasts, right?
I
But
can
like
tell
I
you-
don't see. Yeah, maybe you can say something because I don't know shit about Texas, bro.
So like there's like 3 main areas. You know, we have the north side, which is essentially Dallas. Irony is we're called D-Town. We're uptown. But then there's Houston, which is all the way down south. And then Austin right in the middle. And in Dallas, that's mainly where Photon's from. Then you also have a lot of like Folly. He was traveling a lot. He set up a faction of TLNT.
Right,
or-
right.
Yeah, over here too. So that was kind of like the rivalry for them. But they would also travel down. I don't remember what the team was in Austin, but there was a scene because that's where Joe Cosmo, he actually taught Hudson, blanking on his
Loveson.
Loveson. Yeah, Loveson and R-Dub back when they were young.
Wait,
And
Joe
then-
taught R-Dub?
Some things, not everything.
Oh, I
But
see.
they would like
Got
live
him
and like
started.
yeah, got him started back way back in the day, before he had life happen. And then over there in Houston, they had YLM, which is Team You Lost Me.
Dude, I
yeah.
haven't heard that team in a while.
I know,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really
I
old
know,
school
it's
too.
been a
That's
good
really
while
old
since I
school,
heard
really
the
old
name.
team. And that's where that stuff is. You know, that's where Losin and all is kind of he got his name from
Dang,
them.
my boy Dang.
Dang, yeah, a lot of people. But so that's where those different factions all were. Still distant. Rivalry wasn't that big, but it was more of a friendly thing. I connected to some people. They have a team called Safe. So it meant Sanctuary and Family Everywhere. And they hosted Safe Backs. So there were Safe Backs, Turtlebacks, and Bowbacks. I basically got people
Bro.
to meet up. They would
That's cool.
occasionally have competition, and they would always have the leader would always be the MC of it, right? And they would
Right.
be the ones essentially getting everyone together and doing all that.
Okay, here's a conversation real quick.
Mhm.
Who's the best at that time from Texas? Who's the guy?
Which years? From
Let's
what
go-
I from what I
Let's go
hear.
2015, 16, 17. Not now.
Isn't
Who's the
Pilgrim-
boss?
Isn't Pilgrim from
Was it
Texas?
Pilgrim?
No.
Pilgrim's
No.
not from Texas.
Where is
Pilgrim's more from upstate, like East
He's
Coast.
from
Oh,
Jersey.
okay.
Yeah. Like,
He's originally from Jersey.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely not Texas. I would say, from what I've heard, 'cause I didn't get involved in those kickbacks until summer 2017, 18, something like that. Tap, Impulse, who was the captain of Team Photon, or Lust, or Folly.
Oh yeah,
Lust
Lust
and
is-
Mary. Yeah,
Wow.
those were like the ones who would go back to back all the time. Because Zipper was still coming up. He was now he's definitely doing that. Same with Prometheus, Crush.
Crush, too.
Yeah. A lot of people. you know.
What about
but
like
I always said that
2018 to 2019? Like who?
COVID, like that.
There's
Like I would say we had one
There's like
boss.
just nothing.
Oh wait,
I would
wait,
say
wait, wait,
Wonka.
wait, wait,
Wonka.
wait.
Wonka.
2019
Wonka.
though. 2019 though. That is when RJ started.
Hmm.
I feel like RJ is definitely probably one of the best livers in the world right now. But like he hasn't there was no place for him to really
Shine.
show that off. It's not there's no platform for him to really show off right yet, right? Like cuz it's like there hasn't been anything big, I feel like, where it's like he can put on paper and be like, "Yo, this is what happened," right? But we obviously all know how crazy he is, right?
I would argue he's one of the best finger tutters, not the best glovers.
Really? Because
there's differences.
Holy shit, bro.
I mean, I see stuff that he does that I don't think Pilgrim couldn't do or Ash couldn't do. Like, there's a lot of other people who Emo couldn't do. There's some crazy stuff, but there's no
Because
glare
that's where
or
that
no
disconnect
glitch.
becomes, right? Like, just because you're finger tutting with lights on, like it may or may not be missing elements that we would see as like, oh,
And
this
and
is
that's
like,
all subjective too.
yeah,
Yeah, that's all.
subjective.
My
Yeah,
opinion.
we're
That's
getting
like-
into super.
Yeah.
into other territory. But I will just say that the way that he does it is just so to me very satisfying.
Yes,
Right.
Oh yeah.
that's no doubt. Like, he
100%.
got the Fibonacci in his head or something.
Yeah,
Like,
Fibonacci.
I can definitely say that he goes into this kind of this neutral space, like this metaphysical space in his head, right? When he's really getting into just like I don't want to say there's no cognitive thought. It's just like literally him exploring and just be like, look what I found. Wait, what's over here? And it just go like it's literally just him like following a trail of piece of candies just all the way down. And it's just like he's not really. I'm not saying that he's not really thinking, but he's just like not really registering like massive reactions that most people would want to have. Kind of
It's
deal. He's just like, nope, I'm gonna keep
constant
going. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, he might be labbing in the
Yeah.
show, bro. He's just labbing in front of
There's
you
a lot
and
of
stuff,
times
right?
when his videos come out, it is just him labbing, but it's just like you literally just see his through line through his thought process, and you can follow along really easily. You know, so that's where like to me, I always say RJ is a perfect demonstration of what flow looks like. That isn't what people think flow looks like.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just because you have that perfect throughput through his entire concept chains. So.
Man, we talk about RJ a lot on this show. We should just get him on one.
You should have him on.
If anything.
That would actually be very interesting to have him on. So
I'm not gonna do it. I don't know RJ like that.
I could reach out to him.
Yeah, you should. That'd be dope. I've never met him or talked to him, but he's very cool.
Oh yeah, dude. He's cool, really cool dude. Back when he was like blowing up, I recorded him during our LAN meetup, or for ISO, our first meetup. He came out and kicked it at our Airbnb. So if you go and look at our 30-minute movie, there's like a whole section of RJ and 30K trading. It was very nasty. But yeah, he's been killing it for a while. Very humble dude. He likes to rock fuzzies, at least from at the festival.
He likes
Yeah, he
fuzzies.
was just f***ing people up with him though. Really, really cool dude. He's very busy though, because of his job and his schooling. He's kind of it's in the background for him.
That's fair.
Mhm.
Actually, like kind of a side tangent. But Kevin, so after doing this for as long as you have, like with your community, if there's something that you can do, like retrospectively going back and like start fresh, is there anything that you would do different or change, or like you wish the circumstances were kind of different in terms of like how Hawaii was run?
I would have asked Direct to join IM earlier.
You want to go into that? I'm very curious.
So that was like kind of like half joking, but there are a lot. I just wish there were some. How do I put this? So IM has really been the only team to just continually grow and to just keep pushing throughout all these years, right? That unfortunately, you just see all the other teams die off.
I mean, you guys still got like Lost Boys and stuff running around, right?
Yes, but then I mean, if you look at the big picture, right, Lost Boys is relatively newer, and on top of that, it's really just Seaway and Nathan today. It's really just them now on Hawaii. Um, and so if there was perhaps a way that I could reach out, or like maybe even I see, I don't even know how I would do this because it's like to just help those other teams like continue to grow. You know what I mean? Like I help the leaders somehow achieve a state of longevity the way that IM has. Now, I don't know what that even looks like, but I feel like that's probably the biggest problem to me in my eyes right now in terms of the Hawaiian scene is that there's not as many crews. And see, I don't know, and this is it's confusing because I don't know if it's because of the competitive nature that it still kind of holds. Because like we're like even till today we're prospecting guys that from other teams now. It's like we kind of just don't care anymore if you have part of another family team, right? Because like we as I am wanted to be like the Hawaii team, right? So for some, especially today, for some newer generation of kids that has like a completely new crew that like strives to want to be like that top tier gloving team, right? You're not, it's gonna be so hard to find that nowadays. So there's a fun in having those rivalries. There's a fun in having those other teams, like even though, you know what I mean, we're all in the same ship, we're all like Aloha Nation, to somehow guide other teams into to become bigger, I guess.
Right,
That's such a hard
right.
thing to do. I don't even, you know.
I mean, I think that, I mean, you know, I've said this before. I like personally the idea that people can be on multiple teams because I've always treated teams more as like family. Like all the teams that I have are all East Coast based, right? So they're all like people that I've like vibed with. But there is something to be said about the fact that like it can kind of confuse like the competitive nature of it. Where one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the newer glovers who are coming in, at least locally, have no real interest kind of creating local teams or joining local teams. Any teams that they're on are purely online based. Which kind of makes sense because like, for example, with Dustin coming in during the COVID era, it's like a lot of those connections were being made online, you know? So it kind of, like, I have no real good answers for it to how to solve this problem, but it's like, it might just be one of those things where it's changing. So maybe one way to start looking at things is like, competition should focus a lot more on less like that team aspect and like focus more on like really pushing more that individual competitor aspect. Not to say that it never was like that, but it's maybe a chance for us to like maybe push that even more on the forefront, if that makes sense.
I kind of agree. I honestly feel like there should just be one community ran ranking system if you want to do that. All you do is you make a ranking system, you assign points to people or even teams, and people are gonna want to become competitive. They like to see that number there. That's it. It's simple. That's it. Just like when IGL, man, like that team set,
right.
like that team. How many teams were like competitive, right? Like I know that brought IM to its most competitive aspect ever. Right, you just need a visual to be like, okay, this guy's here, this guy's there, this guy's there, and I think they just need to see a number, and that'll drive people. Something that easy, but it's so hard.
Oh yeah, I mean we have something like that with pit battles, and
we had a massive resurgence when that happened.
And then now it died down.
Well, I think the problem with a ranking system in pit battles is just simply that it does come down to just votes, and like in terms of like I don't hold pit value as high. I don't value pit battles as much as say like a sanctioned online gloving competition, right?
No,
I'm just gonna be real, right?
No, that's fair. I think that for me, well, I mean, I think for me, what it is is that as like a group, as like a culture that's basically kind of going more grassroots, kind of going back towards grassroots, rather than having like an entity like Amazing, like kind of like making everything official. It's kind of gonna be up to us to like kind of like, if we choose to use something like pit battles as like an institution to like basically
Can I just cut in right there? So
yeah, sure.
back in the day, there's this thing called like, and I'm going a little bit into gaming, okay? Back in the day, there's this thing called Smash boards, which was all the smashers from all the regions go into this forum, and within the forum, you'd be able to see tier ranking systems of each individual state. Okay, you really and these community, they're just all ran by community. That's it. There doesn't need to be this. There doesn't need to be this entity, this official entity that covers everything. You just need, like, if you had just your own local like ranking system, and that I feel like could be a start. Because like you wouldn't have to micromanage all these other states, right? If like from one to imagine, like that's such a crazy task for gloving.com that like. Have all these numbers, right? And then like just collect the stats from everywhere. But if like every local community did one themselves, and if there were like maybe this one guideline that everyone kind of like agreed upon, I think that's cool. I think that's dope, and that could be the start of something.
No, that was the conclusion I was gonna come to, is exactly that. Like, I think it's a matter of like pit battles, basically like the people who run it, doing what they're doing right now, which is like kind of constantly pushing for that community legitimacy, right? Because ultimately it comes down to us as a community basically agreeing that they are the macro level voice for community rankings. I think that the area that I want to say disagree, but the point of contention for me right now is that I honestly think that the voting system could work, like not the community polls, but like the judge voting system, right? Or like the judges are giving like single points, and it'd be like a best 2 out of 3. I think that could be a legitimate format.
I mean, I think there's just flaws in it because, because I'm a moderator for pit battles and I kind of am part of how it operates. One of the issues is holding judges accountable, because the way that it would be more I guess taken seriously, right, is that if we had a consistent panel, right, of like, these are your 20 people, you're gonna, and instead of you picking, you're assigned randomly 3 of these people to judge your pit, right? And that is something that we tried doing before, but it's really hard to hold all those people accountable to judge, right? Because in a normal circumstance for a pit battle, what'll happen is you'll have 2 people and they'll be like spitballing people that they want to judge their shows, and more often than not, it's going to be a person that like coincidentally will probably hold bias towards them, right? Like, I know that for myself, I will tend to try and pick people that I feel like will actually vote against me, because I need the feedback. I want the feedback to know if I'm doing, to know if what I'm doing is on the right track. Whereas some people just, some people may just want to hear this dude like, oh my god, your show's so good, like, fucking check marks all across the board, like, you did good, you won this one, right?
I have a question. Are there other dance communities that even have some sort of ranking system?
I would say Peter would be able to answer that one. Mckinnley too, if you do know.
Really?
What from where I know of like dance competition, things like that, is from my husband's background in ballroom dancing. Ballroom dancing has this whole structure. Wow. I mean, it has a point system. It has very rigid rules that you have to follow. You have to have your torso pointing in a very certain way, and your arms have to be at a certain angle at certain levels, and your head has to be looking at certain ways. If you do not hit those, you do not get those points. It's a did you hit these? Yes, you get the point. You did not, you don't get the point. That's how ballroom basically works. And there's a whole chart. Like, I talked to him just because I was trying to understand like what it is that goes into ballroom dance competitions and things like that. And it's a very meticulous thing. Now, granted, we are talking about some of the oldest traditional dances that have been around since the 1600s, for crying out loud. I mean, this is stuff that was done in masquerade, you know. So there's a very meticulous nature to it all, and it's just because what they've cultivated over centuries, putting these things together, and the symbolic traditions that they also represent, blah 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 blah. But yeah, he definitely says it is very meticulous of just how you have to do it, and that's something that I've wondered if gloving could actually adopt or not, like a ballroom variant of gloving.
So Peter, just to follow up on that, so with ballroom, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I'm asking because I'm ignorant. Is it more, is in some ways kind of like ballet where like you have very specific dances where like, or is it more like you have these forms that you can move in and out of, and these forms themselves have like perfectly defined rules?
I would say the latter. So basically, you have things like waltz, Vietnamese waltz, the foxtrot, the rumba, the samba. You have European, Latin, and non-Latin dance divisions, basically, and they're all just different categories of styles of dance, And one of the things that you'll start to notice is that there's now something that even the hip hop community is actually kind of somewhat adopting from like the ballroom in terms of a competitive scene. Just with like the point systems. It's something I started noticing because you'll see like through competition shows like So You Think You Can Dance, they're actually like using the same tabulation scores on street performed dances as they do with ballroom. Yeah.
So I think based on that, I think that gloving could potentially move towards more of that ballroom idea, because we already do have like aesthetic rules in place for like what is clean, right?
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to our more geometric like kind of techniques. I think that where the, I guess like artistic ambiguities would lie would be more along of, for example, like gloving, for example, our forms can be very creative even if our like baseline rules are can be very strict. And also our transitions are a part of that creative flair, right? So I think that the other thing that might make certain our ability to codify things a little difficult is the fact that whether we like it or not, gloving does inherently come from a countercultural background, and there's a lot of freedom there in our creativity that's inherently explicit, and there are definitely some people who would push against that, and I think it would basically be a matter of the community as a whole somehow just basically like the strongest voices finding like their general consensus basically, and then moving forward from there.
Yeah, and to me that's just something that should be happening throughout time. It's just as it's there and it keeps getting developed and cultivated and just keeps spreading. A great example is like contemporary dancing. It was not necessarily something considered right in competitive ballroom, but it now has its own place within the ballroom competitive scene. And this is a style of dance that likes to use shapes, forms, and movements to express certain emotions and really hone in on a narrative and trying to display whether it be a message or a simple story or even a point, of like a moral point. It's one of those things that even contemporary dance in now street dancing, hip hop, popping and locking and all that stuff are now starting to cultivate this kind of consensus amongst itself. And that's where I think gloving is kind of the step behind, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that one thing that would help, we have like bosses and IGC or G3s, like the big competitions. But then we also have like a Flowtron, right? Which is like a different kind of competition. Then we have that's basically it. I think what would help everyone is if we just have more competitions of different sorts.
Yes.
Big and small.
Yes.
And that just gets more people that would just want to do it at all. Kind of like what I know Kevin is working on. Kind of like that.
I like now that we're talking. Yeah. Now that we're talking about this, I would, because I have thought of a system before where it's like, okay, what if I just started something of like, say, like a ranking system, but like only just, you know, just kind of organized of each community and scene, right? And the ranking system wouldn't be amongst everybody, it would just be amongst that state, right? And then like if you have like, let's say only 8 people join, then that would be like a B tier tournament. So you would, right, only this B tier tournament only accounts for this certain percentage, whereas like if you get 32, that's like an A tier tournament and like the points fully count. And then like if there's even more, if you host more, then that would be like an S tier tournament where those points are like even more so, right? Because it's a bigger competition, the weight is different, right? If you could
the
somehow...
population versus stakes would actually tabulate through your score system in that fashion.
Right. See, but I don't know how to do all that math.
No, there's programs out there that even like big
that
companies like WotC, Wizards of the Coast use for their Magic tournaments. Konami uses it for their Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. Nintendo uses it for their Pokemon tournaments, which, yes, surprisingly, those still go and they're still really popular.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, no, but then if I were to, or if, I can't do that by myself, I'm gonna be real. But if there were like this organization or this team that created such a thing, right, and would be considered this, maybe this, you know what, like what Dustin did, that official thing. It doesn't need to be from any sponsorship, but from this official organization where we can start it, right, and be like, okay, if you want to be on this list, like have your leaders contact us so your community can be on that list, right? But you would have to reach these certain guidelines in order for that competition to count. But the thing is that, see, the problem with that though is that I feel like the competitions would just have to be ran all the same way, which is impossible. And then so, which is why I would go back to just having the own local communities have their own ranking system, and they could just have that done however they want. And I think just to have that on paper would incentivize more people to want to compete or want to even climb that, right? To want to be better, and that could cause something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's like sorry, Peter, go on.
I was just gonna say the thing that comes to mind when I think about that is and I'm sure Josh, you know this because D&D uses as well the DCI number.
I'm actually not familiar. Yeah, can you please elaborate on that?
Okay, so the DCI is a system that they have for tracking players' participation within sanctioned tournaments. Magic the Gathering uses it. I heard D&D uses it as well for like adventure leagues and things like that. And the
okay, yeah, I'm familiar with Adventure League, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they use this as like a way of tracking. So that's kind of the idea that we would need for gloving, is just kind of have like people get a number for that goes into the system that helps, like the system just automatically tracks, and all of the people have to do who are hosting it is just literally put in the results. Plug in the numbers, put in the results for that tournament, and it just goes into the system and it like just kind of tracks them.
Calculate.
Yeah.
Then I think
wait. So someone wanted to. I heard you brought up the Wizards of the Coast system. Do you know how they're? So this system is defunct now. But when
this thing is gone now because organized play is gone. I don't know what they're doing now, but that's kind of the idea. Is we need a gloving organized play.
Organized play for Magic, in particular, is not gone. It was revamped. Their original system got completely scrapped and then redid into something different. I actually think they don't keep track of your points anymore, because you used to get a thing called like Planeswalker points, right? And this is where like everything's gonna start connecting within the conversation that we had. So like every event had a multiplier based on what the event was, right? and
Very similar
so
to
you had
your
things,
tier system, Kevin.
so
Yeah.
you would have a thing called FNMs, Friday Night Magic. You go, and it's just like a local community based, not community based, but it's like, well, yeah, it's community based, but it's sanctioned by Wizards, Wizards of the Coast, and it's like those events had a 1x multiplier, right?
Yeah.
You can go to those once a week. You go play whatever. You and like the amount of rounds that you have, because the difference is like the tournament structure is different for Magic than it is for gloving, right? Gloving is single elimination, whereas
Magic Swiss
yeah,
round
Magic is
tournament.
Swiss cut to top 8. So like everybody is there playing for X amount of rounds. But like say an FNM, you win. You're the very best of that night. Like you get every single win possible, so on and so forth. Say you get so it's like 3 wins, 3 points per win.
Something like that. It's been a long
Like
time
that.
since I've seen it, but yeah, it was like 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss.
Yeah, so say at the end of it you have 5 wins, 6 wins. So you have 18 points for an F and M, right? That's because you have 4 rounds and then cut to a top 8, right? So that's 7 games of Magic total that you would have to play to win. So that's 21 points, right? It's a 1x multiplier. You get 21 points added to your profile, right? But then say you take something bigger, you go to like a 100-person event. You're looking at 8 rounds with a cut to a top 8.
So
So
the
that's
multiplier is
11.
higher.
The
Right.
multiplier for those in particular, I believe, were 10.
Right. No. So this is what I'm saying. I think the problem with that would be all the competitions to me would have to all be the same. Like the rules,
Right.
the scorecard,
Yeah,
if
the
there is
structure.
one, a judging, the structure, right? So like,
Well,
how would we fix that
Well,
So-
problem?
the way. Go ahead, Josh.
So yeah, I think that the way I'm looking at this kind of more from a top-down perspective, right? I think the top-down perspective for me is that you have a baseline competition structure. Like these are the
Okay.
you have the baseline rules. And these are like the rules that no matter what cannot be changed.
Yep.
Right? Then from there, we would basically apply like a potential module system, right? No, hear me out, hear me out.
No, not. This is exactly what gloving.com was, right?
Basically, it was at one point, yeah. But that's what I'm just saying. Like to me, when it comes to stuff like this, it's like just having a gloving organized play would be the step that would really bring a lot of this stuff together. But yes, also having like the baseline structure of a comp tournament structure for gloving would
Okay.
also put that into motion.
Yeah, so
Go on, Josh. Sorry.
yeah, so basically like with this module system, like you could basically apply what it would essentially be like the subsystems for specified tournaments, right? So for example, if you had a specifically like a tutting or like a textile like tournament, you would have certain rules that are additionally applied to that, right? Like the scorecard might be modified to fit those needs, right? And then from there, each module, depending on the type of tournament it is, would have different multipliers to that total point system. That's basically where my idea is at. So there are like some competitions that are just more fun and wacky and weird, but they would definitely yield less, right? They might even yield like a times 0.75 like to your total, because like
It's not within the normal.
right, because it's already kind of like a weird experimental thing. It's like we want to acknowledge that you won, but also like we can't give you like the standard amount of points that we normally give.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
So I
interesting,
think
actually. Wow.
Well, that's what I was
So-
saying. It kind of comes down to that whole stakes aspect. Like, how big are the stakes? That kind of adds into that whole multiplier level as well.
So the issue, right? The overarching issue with establishing something like this within gloving is the reason why it works for card games in particular,
I see
right?
where you're going with this. Yep, go on.
Yeah, the reason why it works for card games is because you have your list of rules that are universal across whatever you play. And you can and the limitations that you set do not change how the game is played. You know what I mean? Like in Magic you have X amount of different formats to play, and your limitation is the kind of cards you play, right? Like what sets those cards are from, but it doesn't change how the game is played. When you try to apply that same kind of thing to gloving or dance, right? That's different, right? Like say we have an entire tutting competition, right? That changes everything because tutting alone in gloving is you know, like that is it's also hard to really like put rules to all of this because it's an art form and less of a
Yeah,
competitive
game.
game, right?
Right.
Like
That's why I was going with the ballroom dance aspect of it all because of that. Because it is a form of dance, it is a form of art, but it has very rigid universal rules that not only here in America, but in Latin America, in Europe, and Africa, like everybody around the world follows this rule set that they use for competitive ballroom. And that's where it's like, this is where I feel like our answers lie. It's just trying to understand how ballroom does it and see if we can apply it. And it's, to me, it's kind of just, we need to test it. We need the field data.
It's no, I honestly no, Peter. I do agree with you. It is an interesting like mental exercise to try to apply those elements to our to gloving culture. I think the biggest kind of dissonance with that, however, is because of the fact that ballroom and gloving culture have such different modern cultures and also root cultures, like where they come from and why it is the way that it is now are they're in two very, very different places, right?
No, I definitely agree with that. It's
yeah.
just, to me, it's just like there is an idea here that we could extrapolate. What it
Right.
is, I don't know yet. We gotta test it. You know.
Right. And
So,
also to Kevin's point, I'm sorry, what were you saying, McKinley?
I was gonna say, you know, like the history. You know, we should look into the history of how their competition started in ballet. You know,
Yeah.
at some point, they decided, oh, let's pick these songs. Like, what if I talked to Greg Irwin about this one time? He wanted to do a competition, and I thought a good idea would be to do the finger fitness routine that he did on TV, right? But then add a spin to it or something. You know, but like everyone does that, that's the objective. We're creating that specific choreography, and then your points are off of that, right? The cleanliness and execution of a specific thing. I've always felt like competitions, or even in pit battles, that's where pit battles has always been a game to me for the, and people get mad at the game or get mad at the player, that whole thing, you know, depending on why they even started playing the game to begin with. That's a whole different conversation. So like, you know, so it's like competitions, the reason why people enter them are always for different reasons too, and the reaction is based on that, you know. So if we added, like, let's say just a straight dial competition, straight wave TuT competition, you know, every competition, do it all, and then we can slowly, because you're also educating the masses as you have all those things happening too, you know, and making it more clear. Yeah, sorry, I decided to like.
Oh no, I get where you're at.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I just feel like doing something like that within gloving itself, like, is hard, right? For people to
I agree.
participate in it is hard, and like situations like that are what help stimulate growth, right? Like I understand that, like difficult difficult things are required in order for things to start growing, right? Like it's all about the challenge. But the other issue that comes to mind with this is like, how serious is gloving to the general populace, right? The average 50-75% of people that are active like all the time with gloving, like how serious is it? And
Right.
it's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of like, what is gloving's foundation, rooted from? Raves, doing drugs, playing with lights on your hands, right? It's only but so serious, right? Like ballroom dance, because of how strict and how serious it appears to me, right? There's no way that its base foundations was dudes hopped up on stimulants being like, yo, this is great. I've got this great idea, guys. Like,
Or was it?
No,
Or
they're
was
just
it?
I was
drunk
about to
off the
say you
wine.
don't know, bro.
Yeah, do
I
you
was
know
gonna
that?
say their
It's-
views on drugs were. I mean, these guys were doing opiates for fun, so you never know.
Drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad. Because drugs are bad, okay? It's a bad thing to do drugs, so don't be bad by doing drugs, okay? That'd be bad. Drugs are bad.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I mean, but that's also taken, ballroom dance would be like some 100 years old, right? Or
Well,
something like that.
well,
Like,
see,
I don't know how old it is.
Well, I don't like to think of it that way. I think it's more so of like, okay, we're gonna have this, and then so we're gonna do it, and the people who are serious about doing it will do it. I don't think I think that's a separate problem.
Right,
Right.
because I was thinking about magic. I'm not that into magic, but I like to listen to a lot of people talk about it. Because it is another subculture that it fascinates me in many respects. And one thing that my friend Ian was telling me was the fact that WotC's making a lot of these decisions right now with Magic, because they're because at the end of the day they're a toy company, right? And they're trying to cater towards like the most amount of people. And I said, well, why is Wizards of the Coast making all these decisions right now? And that's catering towards like a bunch of potential people who might never actually join the hobby seriously, rather than focusing on the people who are every single month are going to be buying the new thing, or every single whenever the new pack comes out, well, like, they're gonna be the ones who definitely buy that stuff. And Ian says, well, it's because like that's the thing, a majority of the people playing Magic are what you would consider like kitchen top gamers. Like they don't care about what's actually happening within like the culture of Magic. What they care about is just literally buying the new cards every once in a while and just getting over to a buddy's house and just playing. And I feel like that's honestly kind of what it is for gloving sometimes too, because it's like what you said, Kev, like you would always have like one or two new people at every single like meetup, but you would never see those guys again. And I think I've met a lot of random glovers like in this area actually, like in passing. But I would never see them at any meetups, because for those guys, gloving to them is just every once in a while pulling out the lights when their friends are over and just doing the thing.
Right.
Like, one of my closest friends right now, James, is just like that. He doesn't actually care about like interacting with the gloving community like at all. He's a fire glover for someone who only practices when we come over to hang out. Like that's the only time he actually pulls out the gloves. He never practices, does nothing. But I think that's what most of any hobby is, right? Like at least a good 70% of that chunk are just casuals who just like to do the thing with their buddies,
It's a phenomenon that I like to call the bedroom hobbyist, right?
Right.
So I think that it's kind of like a running joke with a lot of my friends is we have this thing called closet fans. So you're like a fan of something that you don't want people to know, so you keep it in the closet. Like a good example, I have a friend. It is a joke. We use it as a joke.
Is it a gay joke, Peter?
At least for me, it is.
How could you, Peter?
How could
Oh
you?
no, I'm being canceled.
Oh, I'm being censored! I'm being censored!
Oh no, Belinda, please. No, so it's one of the things that I call the bedroom hobbyist, and it kind of derives from the slang of a bedroom glover, which are people who literally just enjoy the hobby in their bedroom and don't tell anyone, right? They just enjoy it themselves. And it's funny too, because I always tell people, it's like, oh, a bedroom glover is just a glover who likes to record his videos and post them online in his bedroom. And it's not necessarily the case, because it is basically how you guys say it. They're lurkers. They're people who simply watch and consume content, but don't interact whatsoever, right?
Yeah, but I think if anything, that's kind of why like the entire conversation we had about like basically imagining like what a future of like gloving competitions could look like is a great conversation, because that's the thing, right? If there isn't an infrastructure or like a like a like a a more of a hardcore community that could potentially lead people into diving deeper, right? Then
Yeah.
for most people, it's like they will never even know that is this bigger world to kind of explore and to really dive into. For them, they'll be like, "Oh, gloving's cool, but you know, where's the culture? Culture, where are you?" Like they're gonna be like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep doing this on a casual level because, in my mind, as far as I'm aware, that's all that exists." So, I think it is kind of it's why this conversation kind of is important, you know. Like let's at least provide the door so that someone, if they're interested, can at least walk through on their
Okay.
own term.
I mean, the
What's
internet
step one?
exists, bro. The internet.
What's step one?
In my opinion,
What is step one?
I think honestly, if I was to do
You get your
anything as a
hands on
step
some
one-
gloves. Step 2. Step 3. Profit.
Well, honestly, it's kind of why I think like the people from both like the people running pit battles and also potentially what's it called YGM should have some sort of like serious conversation, because I feel like right now like YGM is kind of that face, right, of like official competition, right? And pit battles on the other end, they're the guys who are seriously like doing a lot on like the grassroots,
Yeah.
like on the ground shit, you know. So that's my opinion. I think those two need a serious conversation and decide how they want to take things, and hopefully work together.
I mean, we've already Josh, you and I have had a taste of this, and McKinley as well. The dev team for the Vortex gloves.
Right.
You know, we actually band together and sat there and we just had a very serious conversation of like, what do we know from our personal experience that we know from our neck of the woods in the gloving community that glovers like and want in a glove set? And we were definitely giving him as much information as possible. So when he came out with it, every time I hear people talk about it, they always talk about the defaults. They always talk about the features that it has, and it's like, this is things that I never thought was even possible to have on a glove set. So,
Well, I think if anything, the Stone Orbits team, right, as well as they're having, in my opinion, like certain similar, I guess, like challenges, right? Because I think for a lot of people who own Vortexes, like you, me, McKinley, right, we see like the power of these things. Like we love our Vortex glove sets, but it's like right now it is kind of like for the people who really only like care about it. I feel like the next step for Stone Orbits, especially once they get like their next few like kind of updates and iterations like really solidified, and like I think at that point it has the potential to basically be more marketable on like a larger level. And at that point it's like, now we need to hit that larger stride. Now we need to like make sure there are more people using it and know that this is a viable light platform that people could be going to other than just traditional microlights.
yeah. So for me, Kevin, I don't even know if you actually seen my Vortex video, like Advent Vortex, where I actually talk about like the whole thing about it.
I seen the light before. That's the one with the wires though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought I did a really, really good kind of overview of like what it is and what it brings to the table. And one of the things that I just really appreciate is that it's something that it brings something completely new and revolutionary to the table, but does not make what has come prior obsolete, right?
Yeah, like it's creating a larger, they're like basically just providing more options, right? Because I love both options and I don't want microlights to ever go away, but I think there are a lot of people who benefit from this ecosystem.
Yeah. In all honesty, in my opinion, I feel like Vortex makes for really good project video lights, because you can do some really crazy things. So if you have like some really cool, crazy ideas, yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like it's just kind of like getting people just to talk about more and be more open to talking about it as well. Because a lot of times it's just like, yeah, people get it, but then we don't hear anything from them. You know, granted for me, it's like, yes, I'm the Mr. Analytical over here who goes deeply into it and then tries to figure out and tries to present it in this way that people can understand it. there's just so many avenues you can go with it. So it's just like, how do you quantify that without having to break down every single aspect of it? Not only that, we have this entire new genre of flash patterns called sequence flash patterns that we haven't even like really tapped into before.
Yeah, I think honestly a big problem just overall that we're having, right, and not just like the competitive and like the light space, but also just like from a gloving standpoint, is the fact that the people who are doing a lot, I would say most of the people doing gloving right now is like people who have stuck around for a very long time, or people who do plan to stick around for a very long time. But it's like, what, like all the new people are also people roughly around our age that I see, right? Because when I first started gloving, I would see a lot of new glovers who were my age at that time, which was like, I was a teenager, right? I was 16 years old. But I don't see a lot of like kids that age now getting into gloving, right? Like, and because we're older, it's like, how well versed are we in these newer social media platforms like TikTok, right? If anything, I think that's kind of, in my opinion, what I'm trying to help set up for the next like 5-10 years, is that like making sure those infrastructures so that a kid like me in like 10 years who is 16, who just finds gloving, right, could get into it and have that like, not even a metaphorical wide-eyed view, but a literal wide-eyed view of like a kid getting into a new hobby for the first time. And I think that's why what we're doing now as a community is important, so we can literally set up like an actual new generation of wide-eyed kids who are ready to just fucking tear the world apart, you know?
I thought about this yesterday actually, marketing like, or making smaller lights just for like younger people, because I could see gloving just being a young kid thing.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
you see like kids with like huge, like the lights just don't fit on them.
Like, you remember
You know what I
Slayer?
mean? It doesn't work. Yeah, like Slayer, or like remember Lily, like from Boss back in the day.
I was gonna
Exactly.
say, I was just gonna say Lil B, Lil Hefe. He was like, if I remember correctly, he was like 11 or 12 years old.
I was gonna say he's
when
like
he
12
was
years
doing
old
the
when he got
Boss
into gloving.
Browns. Yeah, if I remember, I think it was like as early as 9. But I remember his first bosses when he was like 12. So, like, I remember seeing this kid, like, yeah. I mean, I think they're still on Amazing Lights YouTube channel if you check. Like, but yeah, no, like, I remember him just tearing it up. So, I don't know if it's just because 2020 happened, and so we kind of just like got all separated, and therefore we weren't able to like give that kind of exposure of gloving to kids and young
Well,
adults.
yeah, the way that all the companies are marketing it is towards like adults who are going to raves, right? But then there hasn't really been an honest try in marketing. Well, we don't even have smaller lights that fits for like children, right? But there isn't a company that markets to like children and then like giving light shows. It's always
Right.
towards rave culture. If I were to like start like let's say I had like all the money in the world to like maybe help gloving, right? I would do that. I would make a light company, but with gloving for kids, make smaller lights, show little kids giving each other light shows, and that could be the start of something totally new rather than it be marketed to
young
raves,
adults,
right?
Yeah.
I think the
Right.
problem is like, what if the kid starts learning how to impact, right? And then another kid goes blind, and then
Exactly,
gloving no
right,
more. It's
right,
just
right.
like,
So
Yeah,
like,
but like
you're
riding
21,
bikes.
can you impact?
No, but riding bikes still exists. Okay,
True.
riding
I was just
riding
gonna say-
bicycles still exist. I
Look at
learned how to ride a
Beyblades.
bike when I was 4 or 3, right? I've never broken a bone, but I know that there's plenty of kids who ride their bike, they hit a rock, and boom, they're done.
Oh, then we start selling gloving protective glasses.
I was just gonna say, are you seriously gonna be
happening?
pulling the Malcolm in the Middle
It's like a
argument
helmet
where
or knee
the mom is afraid of kids riding on a 2-foot little mini bike, but she was okay as a kid riding on a 6-foot horse?
Mm?
Oh.
You see, there's dangers within every hobby, bro. Every hobby. You can name any hobby, I'll tell you the danger.
Yeah, I
Easy.
mean, you have young kids like going into extreme sports and stuff like that, like skateboarding, BMX,
X
and all that.
Games.
So, yeah, exactly, X Games.
Okay.
So, like, I think that
Fighting. They literally go into martial arts.
right.
Hello, little leaguers, okay? Little leaguers, okay? Little
Literally.
junior leagues, come on.
Yeah, no. So I honestly think I see I see the concern there, but also it's like everything has a risk, because I mean, at that point that's a parent's issue, right? The parents can decide what's best for their kids. Because some kids, maybe they have seizures. Like the parents will be there to be like, oh, my kid has seizures. This would probably not be good for him. But at some point, like that becomes a parent issue, because like, oh, my little Jimmy can't do anything dangerous. Little Jimmy comes out like 18 years old, out of his parents' house, and he's like, I don't know how to do nothing, because like my mom wouldn't let me eat a bag of Cheetos until I was like 16. So that's a parent issue.
Yeah,
Like,
that
okay,
becomes a
that
completely different
that
issue.
that's something I will also kind of concede to, in terms of that thought, because even I remember starting out hearing the stories from people like, oh, my parents didn't want me to touch these gloves, so they actually took my gloves away. I have to hide them. And again, there's like a whole section in gloving history where it's what I call the rise of the bedroom glover. And it's because it's a person who literally hides in their bedroom and then practices like crazy because it's something that they're so infatuated with. Like there was a certain magic that I definitely hear Josh was talking about that I don't necessarily think it's there anymore, but maybe it's because I've had it for so long that I don't know what it looks like anymore. I don't know.
We gotta have a separate podcast episode where we just simply talk about the ways to grow gloving.
Yeah.
Like
Kind of what
all
we've been doing, but I feel
I mean
you.
more, but like other creative ways. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean,
Like no boundaries. Like no boundaries.
okay, no,
Whatever
that's
comes
fair.
to mind.
That's fair. I would love to do that. I have a couple of ideas.
Because
For
I thought
sure.
about making a business and mimic the clown business, but like go to like little kids' birthday parties and they hire, because I was shooting for a kid's birthday party and we had a famous clown. I'm like, holy crap, this guy is good. Like, I wonder if all these little kids would love a light show right now. Maybe bring a big screen projector, right? Glove to the camera, and all the kids like, what? Hey, my kid loves your gloves. Could I buy one? Boom. Now you got a little, you make money,
Kevin's
and
like,
you have, you know what I mean? I was just that, like things like that, like, but that is.
it is a good way to get started, honestly, because at young ages is the best time for you to learn anything, right? Just because of how the human brain develops. It is the most plastic, it's the most malleable the younger you are. That's why you can have kids who know 17 languages by the age of 10, because if you just put that information there for them and you teach them, they'll just pick it up. So like you can do the same thing with kids, except the only difference is like motor skills is different than cognitive function, right? Because
Yeah, but
gloving is all motor skills
Yeah, but I think that, you
and
know,
dexterity.
no, absolutely. I mean, when you're at that age, you're still developing, well, both, but like I still think like at a certain point, like once you're like 10 years old, like that's the age when you like start to develop those skills like properly. So I think it's like a good age to start anything like skill based. You have 10-year-old kids who like are skateboarding and like doing flips and shit and like going all up on those like pipes and all that. Yeah, like I remember one of my favorite festival memories was like I went to like a day festival, like not like a camping one, but just like an event that you kind of go to, right?
Mhm.
At the end of the night, this mom asks me, "Hey, my son's here," and this kid was like 12 years old. Like, "Can you give my son a light show?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And this kid's face just lit up, like it was, and like he was just telling me like, I want to get into this so bad now. And I was like, I told him like, I gave him a website to buy gloves, and like I told him like, you can find stuff on YouTube to get started. And his mom was like thanking me like, thank you so much, like I haven't seen him like this happy in like so long. And I don't know, like I just think there's like a certain joy to like that could be found for like, you know people outside of like our traditional like age range. Like even if you don't end up like participating in like our community at some point, like there's joy to be found with this.
What kid doesn't like pretty lights?
That's what I'm saying. Like
So
I'm like 27 and I still do like
connecting to what Kevin was talking about with the clown thing, there's actually a website called GigSmart. I work with another friend who basically we have like a fire. It's a local fire group. It's really he just had a profile set up for all of us local fire performers. So in case he finds a gig and they need specific technique or whatever or prop, he connects whoever and then
That's
he
dope.
just go perform. And
That
so
is dope.
I've set up something connected with that. I made a because I didn't want to put Glover. So that's so ambiguous. I don't know what that means. I put conjurer, right? And then I made a little video showing the different. I think it's like my 5 favorite acts that I like to perform, with showing each thing in like a couple of seconds. So give them an idea of what's all happening on one little minute video. That was enough to there have a public way to like get gigs for any of this kind of thing, you know. So that's definitely viable. People just gotta want to do it and approach it and have that level of seriousness for themselves. I mean, not for the art, because you should have fun at the end of the day. You want to seriously have fun, but you gotta take yourself seriously too.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that. I want to like just be like, hey guys, I'm a performer. I do light shows. Come hire me. $900.
I mean,
You can put it
I've
wherever
had,
you want.
And a meal.
I've
And a
had
meal.
people in the past comment on my posts in GL saying that they did a couple of gigs and things like that with their gloves and stuff. So like it is a thing. Like, you know, is it a hustle? Yeah, sure, but you know, at least it's honest work. Like,
I play with my hands. Give me money. Thank you.
Yeah, shout out to Toasty. He's the one who told me about it all. His name.
Wow.
I mean, so okay, like kind of like tying this back to the whole history thing. It's kind of like with competitions and also doing like these gigs and things like that. There's actually the more documentation that we get out there, the more that we can actually show like a picture of history. Because sitting there and thinking about it, especially when it came to like the Amazing Lights coverage of like bosses and IGC and stuff like that, you can literally see how trends kind of form from year to year. And it's actually quite interesting. I don't know if I actually want to do like a kind of a breakdown show between like 2010 to 2012 and like show what were the big meta things that were going on, and then like show how it shifted into more of the things. Because they're like, yeah, a lot more flow-based concepts in the early days, and then we got more technical and more technical and more technical, and it just went from there. And then we just kind of branched out into this huge expanse, not only technicality but just curation of structure, you know, whether it's musicality or storytelling or high forms of showmanship, like I like to say, kind of like street magic performance. It's the best way I can describe it. You know, yeah. So when it comes to Hawaii though, how would you say Hawaii's like trends were throughout the years?
Oh, okay. So when I first started, right, the OGs at the time were very slow but technical. Like they were already incorporating digits, a lot of blinkier sets, not a lot of people who did like flails or whips or anything. And there wasn't, I mean, till this day there weren't really a lot of morphers. And then started becoming like after that was started like more like platforms. And it kind of stayed there for a while. And then like kind of like just to skip over to around like 2018 to 19, you'd still see like that platform style, but a lot of people are getting more into like clusters, and other like micro tech, right? But I mean, it's been mostly around that same kind of platforming style still. But like COVID just screwed everything, right? So now you see it's like all types of styles. It's no longer just platforming.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I do see like a nice little resurgence into clocking, kind of happening with a lot of people right now. So that's been really interesting to see. Yeah, a lot of newer glovers are actually like looking into clocking right now. I'm just like, well, that's
I'm working on it, bro. I'm working on it.
It's interesting.
Shit, it's hard. My hands are like wide, bro. I can't clock. Like I can't even. Like this one, bro. This one, I don't get it. I can't see. Like I literally can't.
You can
Yeah,
just make
my
them touch.
fingers are.
They don't have to contort. You can
Bro,
just touch.
they can't even touch. See, that's as close.
Okay.
To,
You can do that, and look, it looks like it.
that's cheating, bro.
I mean,
that's-
yeah.
That's
it is.
cheating.
Who cares?
That's against the
They don't-
rules, bro.
There's no
No rules.
guidelines.
They're even gonna smack me in my sleep if I don't do it right.
Put a rubber band.
Oh my god. Wait a second.
I mean, I have the same issue with my right hand, but I tend to just kind of like
All right.
force
I'm gonna
perspective the pinky to make a horizontal line through the ring that I make with my middle and thumb, but it's not actually touching at all.
All right.
But it works.
Someone's gonna see me mid light show with this thing. Mind your business. All right.
What's that black line on your fingers? Mind your business. That's what.
Mind your business. It's nothing. Why you struggling, man? Listen, I just woke up. It's okay. You see, I don't know.
So I will say this. There was this story going around for a little while between Seaway and the judges of your community, I guess, about abstracting and how it was quote unquote banned. Do you have any insight on that?
Oh man, okay. So I forgot how that rule came to be, but it was somewhere around like I don't know if whoever I have to really remember if people saw Seaway's shows and made it banned that you couldn't abstract, and people from Amazing saw it and was like, okay, yeah, that can't happen. Because if you come from, I mean, if you remember some of the light shows during like Lights On, people would like pick up their cameras and stuff, or they like mess with the camera.
I love Maddox's show that he got DQ'd.
Is that what one of them?
It was
Yeah, see?
finals.
Yeah.
It was finals.
Oh,
He picked it up
really?
and got DQ'd.
It was the final,
Oh.
and he knocked it over, and then did the whole.
Okay, yeah, see, like that, like, okay, where do you draw the line, though, right? It's like, is it, you know what I mean? You got to draw the line somewhere. And,
Or you
sorry,
don't at
but-
all.
right, but like taking your gloves off and spinning it around, right? That's eventually what Amazing came to, where it's like, okay, that's where we're going to draw the line, right? And abstracting, depending on how you did it, which, by the way,
Oh, I
like,
knew he was
you
gonna.
could still- No, I'm not gonna even say what you think I'm gonna say, but you could still abstract, but it depends on how you do it. That makes it like DQ'd or not, right? And if that involves taking off your gloves, you're gonna get DQ'd. But there was a conversation. There had to have been some conversation within EL that allowed that to happen, simply because of things like Lights On. Right, and then I don't even know if Seaway entered. Did Seaway enter Lights On?
I don't think he did.
Not
He
to
did
my
with the earlier
knowledge.
seasons.
I think that's a question for him.
Yeah.
Right, you would have to talk to the guys from Amazing to get really the best answer, because I don't know how that decision came to be.
Yeah, it's very interesting because one of the elements that I found super compelling, watching some all styles or especially like crumping like competitions, right, is that a lot of those elements of those competitions are a lot more blurred, right? Like, for example, like in a gloving competition, you actively are not supposed to touch someone.
Oh, I remember that rule.
Yeah, that was a rule for a good while. I don't know if it's still a rule, but it was a rule for a good while. Whereas, like, if you go to an all styles or especially a crumping competition, yeah, physical contact is a thing. Like, it is not only allowed, but like, especially in crumping, like, because for them it is like they literally see it as a form of like spiritual battle, right? Like, they would be touching each other, pulling each other's hats off, like doing all this shit, which was interesting for me as someone who found that interesting that we couldn't touch the camera for Lights On, because it is a form of battle tactics, right? Like, doing that is a form of a kind of like engaging with your opponent. But I think a part of that is also part of like the culture, right? Because the again, it comes back down to culture, how these cultures arise. Like the culture of crumping is incredibly different than the culture of gloving and like its origins.
Right, and also if you allow things like that, you're gonna have to deal with the extremes. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like people are gonna start
Yeah.
throwing the camera all over the place. They're gonna start moving everything. You're gonna have lights over there spinning in a circle and doing whatever. And then there's like, you know what I mean? So it's like once you leave that type of stuff open, then it's like people get crazy. People get freaking creative, right?
I mean, there are people out there that like to push the boundaries and test the systems
right,
like that.
and test the system, right?
Like,
exactly.
I think a lot of glovers won't go for it, because I know that watching some of those competitions, like the end result is nuts, right? Like I've seen some guy get pushed out by by the entire crowd out of the venue. Literally, people were just pushing him out, you know. And I don't think as glovers we're like that. Like I think on the whole, even with our competitive nature, we're
Kevin,
genuinely.
I'm gonna send you a bunch of videos that I managed to get out of people last year.
Fair enough. But yeah, I honestly think that like, I mean, but yeah, that's like another reason we're having this conversation, right? It's like, should things like that be allowed? Like in like what we're trying to do here, like in this exercise of trying to codify like what gloving competition should be. My personal answer would be sometimes. Like it'd be one of those like extra rules that you could just pop in there, and I think it'd be very interesting and dynamic. But that's just me personally.
Like we just didn't, like they said no, don't do it, but now no one made a competition for it. You know, no one made an abstract competition. Like yeah, don't put it there, but I think the stuff should happen. Just put it somewhere else. And then you just got that side now. Now you got a whole bunch of people who do that. It's a whole style thing.
Sub-community of abstractors.
Exactly. I mean, they already exist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like if you sit there and just look at styles and how they grew over the years, like impacting, for example. I mean, Kevin, was impacting ever like a known entity in the early days of gloving for Hawaii, or did that come later?
It almost never came. Like you had a couple impactors, maybe 3 or 4, 5 max, but it was never really like a main style.
What about conjuring? I know warrior is like a good example of like conjuring in Hawaii, but was there just a lot of him out there, or?
Well, you'd have to put the name Jester in that conversation because Jester created the team Soon, something out of nothing. That they're strictly a conjure-based team, right? So I consider Warrior to be like the prince of conjuring here, where Jester's like the king of conjuring here. But just knowing his name is Blaine Jester, knowing Jester as a person, he had like this very mysterious and mystical vibe to him, which allowed other people to want to do the things that he did, just with conjuring. And then he started this whole conjuring movement here, sometimes with glovers who just glove with 2 lights and not with the gloves at all. And so yeah, he started a wave for sure in terms of conjuring, and you see that with people who are now on Soon.
See, that's interesting because like impacting would be like the mainland's version of conjuring to you, basically. It's just so stylized and specific because how it got cultivated. Granted, there's a whole history section I'm going to have in my impacting video for it, but TNT definitely like laid down that foundation, and there's a California-based team. Yeah.
Right. So. Well, let's not forget Munch, right? Because Munch was the traditional type of conjuring, and he, in my eyes, in the world, is like the conjure king, right? To like the OG conjure king. But for Hawaii, it was Jester because they simply did things much different. But yeah, I agree. Impacting is its own type of conjuring. It's just not the same, you know, not the same type of illusion.
No, it's very distilled and stylized in
right.
its formatting. And
right.
No, the thing that was very interesting though to hear is how in the earlier days of Hawaiian gloving was slower and blinkier sets. So
yes,
to me there's a whole phenomenon. I think I might actually have to make a whole video about it. But strobing is its own separate phenomenon within the gloving community. I don't think people really realize why that is.
Oh, dude, Kevin, tell Peter about the thing you talked to me about in the Philippines.
Oh God, yeah, dude.
Okay, yes, I would like
This
to hear
is
this then.
this is a total okay. This is the craziest concept I have ever seen in my life, and it came right out of the Philippines. Okay, I had shout outs to Dio. He did this concept where and what the concept is it messes with the cones and rods in your eyes, okay? Where with one light you'll have a very like a tracier set, okay? And then on the other light he'll have a blinkier set, like a way more blinkier set. And what he would do was he would, with one hand with the tracier light, he would just draw patterns in the air, okay? And he would like go around his head. He'd be like going like this, going around his head with the tracer, going around, right? And then instantly he would take the blinkier light, place it right in front of your eyes, and what you would see, and this concept is called astral projection. What you would see would be the trails of patterns that he did with his tracer in it would be like in real time, in 3D space. You would see exactly where it went, because it would burn, like the light would burn your eyes right in that pattern. And once that blinky, or once that change in that blink, like in your eyes, in your peripherals, you would see exactly where it went. And that was, to me, the most amazing concept I've ever seen in my life. And that's
in person.
yeah, you
Okay,
you could test it to yourself. You could just be like this, and then just like put the blinky light to your eye, and then just pay attention to your peripherals. You're gonna see the same pattern you just drew.
So
It's incredible.
So
Yeah.
basically, that's the thing I'm going to be like explaining it in my impacting video. You know, with the whole spoilers now, is it's literally the science behind impacting, because there is an entire layer of science that is at play when it comes to impacting. Not only because of how the light intensity and the strobing effects are, but the color temperatures of those lights and how they actually affect your rods and cones. And how red light actually causes your rods and cones to relax, because it doesn't actually really affect them, as opposed to blue light. And blue light will actually shock your rods and cones. So once you're mixing between relaxing and shocking, you're actually magnifying the effects even more. And that's one of the things that I'm actually have like a little mini part on there is retina burning. And that's where it's like you want to kind of want to avoid doing too much, but that's one of the things that causes the whole distortive effects, is that you see that stuff in your peripherals, you know, and in your peripherals things tends to move more. So if you actually focus on the box theory and just staring out into the middle distance, you'll actually see your peripherals start moving because of that. And that's where you get the full visual effect of what impacting is all about.
And that's what I noticed with getting a show from guys on TNT. Because they actually know what's happening, and the way that they present the way that their modes is very different than, say, someone who put on iNovas and doesn't know those theories of impacting, and they kind of they're just mimicking what they just saw. They don't understand what the theory behind it. But when I get shows from guys on TNT, and I've gotten shows from Havoc, from Skittles, from Dr. Freeze, right? They do it in a way that is like you understand once you get shows from them. It is completely different.
Yeah, and one of the things that's so great about it is that it literally, to me, it's like it's a standardization of a style. Like they have their standard movements and their standard moves and combos and things like that, and they show you like this is how the basic setup is, and this is how you can tweak it to change it up to be whatever you want it to be. But you're still following this very basic lineup. So that's why I thought it was just very interesting that you hear that like impacting was never really something that actually came across to a lot of people in Hawaii until probably much later when gloving exploded.
Yeah, when you gonna get Christian Part on here? Did you guys schedule?
Yeah, no, I
something?
definitely will try to see what he can do. I want to try to like see if we can probably get him for February's, if at the earliest, if not March. And then I want to try to set up another guest that we've been trying to get on here for a good long while now, and try to get her on, because that would be really interesting to see. So, tune in that, guys. Tune into that.
I do think I have to go. I got some stuff I need to take care of.
Well, I was gonna say I'm kind of running out of questions. If anyone else had any other questions.
Kevin, what'd you eat for breakfast today?
I didn't.
Me neither, dude.
Nothing.
I haven't eaten yet.
No breakfast sandwich this time.
No Jimmy Dean's breakfast
Jimmy
croissant,
Dean.
bro. Do you like
Nothing.
the croissant or the English muffin better?
Oof. Try the croissant.
The croissant.
Yeah.
Good choice.
You just now got my husband's stamp of approval. It's because he's French, so.
The English muffin one's okay if you have it in like the toaster oven.
Like the English muffin one, but yeah.
The croissant one though.
Well, yeah, I had a lot of fun with talking with you guys today. Like this, like I can't wait for the next one. We should do a third one. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Wait, what if
if
Kevin just joins the panel, dude? Imagine.
I honestly would not be surprised if we just have him on every time now, just because.
Yeah, dude. I'd be down, dude. Just Sundays work for me. I'd be down, bro. So just
Sundays also work for
hot
me.
rolling up.
Perfect. Now we can add him to the intro officially.
Yeah, but just.
I
pick
definitely
one clip
say
from
the
YouTube
next
somewhere.
time he's coming onto the show, he's definitely going to be the person introducing. So. That's good.
All right. Well, Kevin, welcome to the team.
Yeah, bro. Let's go. Let's do it.
Look at that. All right, now fix gloving. Get to work.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Do it.
COVID
I mean,
ruined
we're all
gloving. You
fixing
gotta
gloving
fix
here,
it.
We're all fixing gloving here, bro. We're all doing something.
All right, well, Dustin,
All right,
you
should we
know
do
how
outros?
to do the outro, man.
Outros.
You know how to do it, right?
You are.
Well, thank you
Dustin
everybody
Peter
for joining us on another episode of Gloving Table Talks. Down below, you will see all of the socials and stuff. And well, who gets to be me? Who gets to be me? Let me break character for a second. Who's gonna be me?
I'll be you.
Okay, you'll be me. Okay, yeah. So yeah, everyone's socials gonna be down below. That's all I got.
Wait, you gotta do this outro. Wait, you gotta do this outro. You ready? You ready?
Okay.
Oh my.
Oh, he's gone! He's gone!